Hello ladies and gents, boys and girls, people of all ages, sexualities and identities, and welcome back to another Doctor Who review. And today's Doctor Who review is a little bit different. We're back in the Bernice Summer Field sort of storyline with Dark Gallifrey, the War Master. Now, the only thing I want to make very clear to everyone before you go and listen to this, if you haven't already, Derek Jacobi is not in this first part at all. That is going to seem very confusing for an audio that calls itself the War Master, but when we get into later episodes, hopefully that should make more sense. But let's get right into it. So essentially, Bernice Summer Field is having a little bit of a trip right now, because she seems to have discovered something that she's not supposed to have. Now, in the beginning of this story, none of this makes absolutely any sense. All we know is that Bernice is with the Unbound Doctor, and the pair of them have been exploring the expansive, dying universe. Now, this dying universe is full of constant contradictions and problems, and most importantly for David Warner's Doctor, finds himself in a situation in which he is grieving the loss of Gallifrey. It doesn't exist, it's gone, it's died, it has departed, and it has gone poof. And so he begins to argue with Bernice that she's been playing around with his history. And now to confuse the audience even more, it turns out that he's been messing with her history, and it's all kind of jumbled. It's like, best way to describe this is imagine the first time you have a hangover and you start contemplating to yourself about the meaning of life and why everything exists and what it all means. That is this story in a whole. But let's continue, shall we? Because why not? So Bernice is now finding herself constantly caught in a step-by-step sort of motion, and then suddenly she begins to talk with the TARDIS, which now I understand why the TARDIS never talks, because, well, the TARDIS is basically telling her to get the hell out of there and stop taking her to places where they're gonna die. Sorry, I know that sounds very exaggerated, but that is the best way I can describe this scenario. Yes, so essentially the TARDIS whinges when she tries to get back for the Unbound Doctor and try and save his life, and starts joking about the idea of maybe taking her on a holiday or a spa planet, places where nothing bad ever happens. And then we cross back over into this kind of bit where we keep looping back and forth, whether it's the Unbound Doctor or Bernice, and we have this situation in which they seem to be fighting against a giant paradox. Then Bernice finds herself grieving over Ace and her dead mother and just a bunch of her dead friends, because she lives in a universe where they are no longer around. It is suffocating Bernice and she can't stand it. Then we have her and the Unbound Doctor talking in a corridor in which he points out the fact that a lot of Gallifreyans don't read. It's all due to the fact that they would, like, the books would talk back to them. So listening to Jane Austen books or listening to Agatha Christie books became, it just became boring to the Time Lords, because, well, who wants to read a whodunit if the book keeps telling you who done it? And eventually we get pushed further and further back to find before Bernice releases the paradox and how she released the paradox, because she opened a door. And then eventually we go so far back to learn the fact that the Unbound Doctor and Bernice Summer Field were having a talk about Dark Gallifrey, a myth amongst the Time Lords, a place that they believed didn't exist. But of course, because Bernice is so clever, too clever for her own good, she finds herself opening a doorway to Dark Gallifrey. And that is apparently how all this trouble started. Right, that is the gist of this story. Now let's get into my thoughts. David Warner, Lisa Bowman, absolute legends in this whole story. David Warner, absolutely chef's kiss, really sells our performance. Lisa Bowman, I really feel for her in this story. I feel like I'm being dragged along with her. She's depressed, she wants to drink, she just is kind of, I'm guessing she's on a sand place somewhere, just kind of pouring her heart out. She ends up with a ghost version of David Warner over her shoulder, basically saying, "It's gonna be okay, Bernice. It's gonna be okay." I don't believe it, Dave Warner. Rest in peace, buddy, but I don't believe it. But yeah, my melodrama out of the way, I really do feel for Bernice in this story, and for that reason, I give it at least a solid 7 out of 10. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next Doctor Who review, which will be more Dark Gallifrey. But until then, goodbye, stay beautiful, you beautiful friends. Lisa Berman, I hope you're having a good drink right now, because that was stressful. Love you all.